Hi, and welcome to the ultimate guide to planning, preparing, and executing the perfect paint night. That's all coming up right in this video. My name's Kristina Moyer, and I'm an artist specializing in acrylic paints, and I've been teaching for well over a decade, almost two. Oh my goodness, that's old. So I hope you enjoy, because I love to perform and share my knowledge and have a lot of fun making art. And I truly believe that art is for all. So let's get right into what this video is all about. Okay, so what is a paint night? A paint night is simply a group of people painting the same image together and having a lot of fun. Usually there's drinks involved of some kind. Usually there's an instructor, a tutorial that you're following, and you have to finish that painting within that time frame, usually around 1 to 2 hours, give or take, depending how big the piece is and how complicated it is, and where the event is happening and all those things. That's basically what a paint night is. You've maybe been to one already, but how do you plan your own? In this video, we're going to cover things from supplies you're going to need to setting the mood, preparing mentally, whether you should get an instructor, just some tips and tricks about actually painting. We're not going to dive too deeply into any acrylic painting techniques. I have lots of videos on like paint with me sessions and that sort of thing. You can also just watch some of my time-lapse videos. You can click on any of those links. Those will help you to kind of navigate some of the techniques you might encounter. But I will go over troubleshooting common issues that you might run into that you might not have thought about, or even maybe you're a practicing artist, but you've never done a paint night. So this is going to be a bit different, right? Because time is not your friend when it comes to paint nights. You don't have a lot of time, so just keep that in mind. So I'm going to give you some of my biggest tips and things that I've had to learn through experience. So this is a gift for you. We're gonna make this a night to remember, something so fun and hopefully stress-free. There are a lot of options when it comes to supplies. I'm going to give you my recommendations. So you might watch this and say, hey, I like to paint on wood, or I like to paint on this paper. That's great. If you have something you love to do, then paint on it. You can paint on whatever surface. Maybe you have access to, wood blocks or some kind of surface that you think is really great and you've painted on before and you've really good experience with it. Go for it. But I'm going to give you my opinions, so just take it or leave it. Up to you. Okay, so when it comes to painting on what, I like to choose canvas. This is something that people can nicely display in their home just by putting one of those little teeth, what are they called? Or they can have it framed if it's something they really love. It's easy to move around. It's pretty inexpensive. And you can buy them in bulk. So I really like that. I prefer to do an 11 by 14, but in the past, I have done 16 by 20. And this is pretty big size compared here. There's the comparison. So that means you're going to have more paint to buy. It's going to take longer. So maybe if you want a 3-hour event, this one right here. If you want under 2 hours, 11 by 14 inch, definitely. It's going to be less expensive as well. So if you're on a tight budget, that might be the way to go. This is also going to determine the size of your brushes that you choose. So if you have a large canvas, you're going to need some bigger brushes to kind of cover areas, maybe the background, that kind of thing. So that's something else to consider. So my go-to is 11 by 14 stretch canvas. And this is the thinner canvas, not the gallery wrapped. So here's a gallery wrapped canvas, about a 1.5 inch thickness. This one here is 0.75 inch thickness. This is my preferred. Again, you're not going to buy these ones in bulk typically. At least I haven't found them in bulk, at least where I live. But these ones you can. So that's going to be more savings in your pocket. That's canvas. That's going to take a while going through all of these. But if you want the ultimate guide, then we have to go through it all. Next up, paintbrushes. These can be super expensive and can really skyrocket your budget if you're not careful. So what do I do when I'm hosting a paint party? Well, because I do it for business and I'm doing multiple paint parties, not just one event, I've invested in nicer brushes and brushes that are multi-talented, multifaceted, have multiple functions and abilities. If you just buy, like, for instance, this big brush, you're going to be able to cover a large surface quickly, so it's really good for a wash. However, if you're wanting detail work, this brush here is not going to do so well drawing, you know, tiny things. And especially if somebody doesn't have experience painting brushes, they're not going to have a good experience. And I want everybody to have a good experience, okay? Art is for all. Okay, so this is one of my favorite brushes, kind of a go-to brush that I found. This is a size 12 round with a tapered tip brush. Now, it is not a super expensive brush, but it does a lot of good, especially when it comes to paint night, and you don't want to go too cheap on your brushes. Go ahead and buy bulk if you can find bulk of a good brush that you know is good. You can buy the packages where they have varying brushes. My only problem with that is I like to try to give everybody a same brush or very similar. These are varying in size. Actually, I think all of these ones are 12s. But when I stay in with that 10 to 12 range, I can use these on an 11 by 14 canvas and a 16 by 20 canvas, and it works pretty well. What I like about these too is I can do fine detail, well, pretty fine detail, for a paint party with this brush. I can also cover a larger amount of space with it. I'll just show you for a second here. So if I have my brush like this, it can do a nice thin line, and if I press down, I can make it wider, and I can cover more space more quickly, so you don't have people staying for 5 hours. So this is one of my go-to brushes. If I have more fine work in the piece, I might have some brushes that are smaller and that just have some variety of functions. So it depends on the piece you are working on and that you select. So I do recommend, if you do have a tight budget, that you select something that could work with a single brush. Think about that as you're working. You can also consider using things like sponges. You can cut up, doesn't have to be a legitimate sponge. It can be a plastic type of sponge. You know what I'm talking about. There's the cheap sponge, then there's the real living thing sponge. And the cheap sponge, those that you can get at the dollar store in big sets, you can cut those up into little cubes and use those as little dabbers to create texture and make something a little more exciting in your painting on a tight budget. Now, if you have, you know, no budget and you can spend, you could buy fancy brushes for everybody. Just make sure you buy enough, and I always get a couple extra because you never know when that extra person's gonna show up, and if you don't have the stuff for them, well, your stress-free event just turned very stressful very quickly. Some other brushes that I like, well, this one's way too big, but I like some of these. So you can buy sets that have kind of similar. Maybe if they're a set of 3 or something like that, you just buy multiple sets of 3. That works. The other idea I have is you can either ask a guest to bring something. If it's a not-for-profit kind of gathering with your friends, you can ask people to either bring a little money or bring your own canvas kind of event or bring your own brush and then just have fun with it. You could even get everybody to paint with something silly. Paint with something that's inexpensive and unexpected. You could even make it an event where it's, you know, just totally different, where it's going to be maybe a kitchen utensil or a stick or something. You're just like, how am I going to even paint with this? And you could make it really fun. So maybe we'll do another video about that later. But here and now, my focus is what is going to be for your successful paint night, where people are going to create a painting they can control and appreciate. And that's this brush right here. This is my favorite go-to. Instead of buying paint palettes for everybody that are kind of designated art paint palettes, you can buy a set of plastic plates, pretty cheap. I do like the larger size because if you go too small, then people can't mix their paint nicely. You want some space to mix paint. So this is the larger size, the dinner plate size. And I do go plastic instead of paper because paper will start to absorb the paint, and you don't want that. You want to be able to mix your paint. You want to be able to add water to your paint if need be, and have a really good experience. So that's what I get for my paint nights. Plastic plates that you can either dispose of or reuse. So I like to try to wash them and reuse them so that I don't have as much waste. Okay, here it is. Dun, dun, dun. Paint. What paint should you buy for a paint night? So for a paint night, paint can get very expensive, just like any art material. You know, you can go really high end if you really want to, but for the most part, you could even go to a craft paint. But what I'm doing for my own business, and if you're looking to start doing paint parties, then you're gonna wanna get something a little bit better than a craft paint. You're gonna want maybe a student level paint or higher. Level 1 or student level, or this like flow acrylic, buying it in bulk, this is the way to go. I like to buy my primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. I buy a white and a black, and that covers me for pretty much most of my situations. Now, if I have a painting that's heavy on a secondary color or even a tertiary color or something like neon or gold, then I'll just buy that separate, and hopefully it's not the whole thing is gold and then I'm doing small detail in black or something. Just be wise when you're selecting the actual paint that you're going for. But I just like to buy these in bulk because then I can use these at multiple paint parties. If you're not, investing in doing a bunch of these kinds of events, and this is just really a one-off event, then just buy the small either paint sets, then you can squirt into each person's paint palette and mix away. And I really think it's fun to do the red, yellow, and blue, have those primary colors so people can learn how to mix paint. And it can make it more unique because maybe they'll make an orange that's different than this other person's orange. Whereas if you bought the specific color of orange, everyone's would look more similar. So I think it's kind of a fun way to learn so people feel empowered with their paint going forward. This is an example of a level 1 paint. And it's in a tube like this. This is pretty large. I would recommend this more for if you're planning to do multiple events or if there's a lot of yellow in the painting or a lot of one color, then buy a larger. You could do half this size. This is 250 milliliters. So you could go half that. I probably wouldn't go too small. You don't want to run out of paint again. Stress-free is the key that I'm going for your event. If this is for a business venture, then you're going to want to invest in easels. There are a lot of different easels you can buy, and they can get pretty expensive. You're going to want to think about portability if you're taking these to restaurants or, different locations. And if if you have your own studio space, you want to go like full on, these ones can range $100, $200 a piece. That could be a really cool long-term investment if you have a big studio space that, an art studio that you're looking to furnish and have kind of more permanent space for those easels. But if you're transporting them, you're really going to want to think about, do they fold down? How heavy are they? And can I get a lot of them all together? If this is just a gathering one-time event, then you can just lay the canvases straight on the table. Make sure there's some kind of tablecloth or something like that to kind of protect the table because you definitely are going to get paint on that table. So make sure it's something that you're okay with that. One thing to note about easels is if they don't have grippy feet on them and you're setting them up and people are painting, it could be slippery depending on what table you're putting it on. So what I've used are those drawer liners, that keep your utensils from sliding back and forth and all that stuff from sliding around in drawers. You can buy some of that and place it on the table so things don't move around. Works for me. Don't forget about water jars. You want to be able to allow people to change their color without taking to the sink each time to wash their brush. So definitely having a glass water jar is my preference so that it's stable. Plastic will be more tippy, so keep that in mind. And also the shape of it can make, this one's a little more on the tippy side because it narrows down here. So if you have a flat, wide kind of cup glass mason jars that are shorter, those can work really well. The other thing you want to do is have some kind of paper towel or cloth. I gather rags that are no longer being used as household, like for hands and kitchen, and I reuse them as artist rags. So it's something that I don't have to keep, adding more to the bin, and I can, just wash it, reuse it. Acrylic paint does not wash out. So that's another note. Make sure that your guests know to wear their not favorite clothing because they could get paint on them. So that's something to take note of. There is paint stuck on this cloth forever. That's okay. It kind of gives it some character. It's kind of a work of art on its own, right? Kind of interesting, maybe. To each their own. If you're doing this as a business and you have an artist studio space, then you might want to invest in some smocks, just some big old t-shirts. Well, they don't have to be old and probably not dirty, but just big t-shirts that can cover people's clothing a little bit, just to help them feel a little bit more at ease when they're painting, if that's your business. But that isn't a must-have. It's not something that I've provided, but if I was doing a lot of like young kids events, then I would maybe consider investing in that. It could also help with branding, and maybe you can sell the t-shirts as well. Before you go and buy paint, make sure you've selected the piece you're going to paint. What is the reference image you're working off of? Normally, what I do is, as the instructor, I go through with the person hosting the event and I talk with them about who this is for. You know, is this for 7-year-olds who are all into like unicorns and cat unicorns and these kind of interesting, fun characters? Or they want to do a still life piece with fruit? Or are they wanting to do silly portraits? Like, what is the group of people wanting to do? Well, that's going to change what colors of paint you're going to want to buy, right? So make sure that you find that out before you buy a paint, because you don't want to have to go to the store twice, and you don't want to not have enough paint for the paintings you're going to create. If you're like me and you're the actual instructor and this is your business and you're doing paint parties and going out and do those events, what I like to do is I like to go on Pinterest and create a board with those ideas after I've communicated with the host. And I post all kinds of ideas, and then I share that board with that person and I say, hey, look through, is there anything that you're interested in? Or is this, going in one direction but not quite the right way? Like, communicate with the host and find the right piece. If you're going to be following along with the tutorial instead of an instructor that's live and present, then you can select the piece ahead of time, kind of talk with your group of friends or whoever you're doing it with, and see, maybe give them 3 options, and then everybody votes for which painting they're going to work on. Then you can go buy your supplies. That also means you don't have to have a demonstration piece completed before the event. As an instructor for paint parties, if you're thinking this is what I want to do, then you're going to want to paint that demo piece ahead of time. What's great about doing a demo piece is it kind of gives you an insight as to pitfalls through the piece. What aspects are actually going to take longer, and maybe you learn some, trial and error of what you should avoid, or, oh, this worked really well, and that's what I'm going to implement when I'm helping to instruct, or that type of thing. If it's just a gathering with friends, you probably don't need to do that, and it can be more fun to just kind of fumble your way through and just letting people have artistic license anyways. Let's take a look at how to set up the workspace so that you can have maximum fun and ease of access for everything. And this is just what works for me. So here's a demonstration of how I would set it up. One thing that's missing is a tablecloth. So I would protect my table with a plastic tablecloth if I was really going to be painting. Then I have my drawer liners that help grip my easels in place. I tighten them and make sure they have enough of an angle where the painting's not falling forward. And these are handmade easels, so they don't have grips at the bottom, but if you purchase them, they might, and you might not need those drawer liners. I only use this backing if I'm doing a larger piece where it might get pushed in by the top of the easel in the center of the painting. If I'm doing 11 by 14, I don't need that. So I have my plates that can slide under the easel. I have water jars, and I always fill the water jars before I hand them out. It's just a bit easier of a system. I put my brushes out and my rags or cloths, and then you can put out the paintings. Obviously, they won't be already painted on. These are just a demonstration. So you can have them vertical or horizontal, and just make sure the easel is the right size for the thing you're working on. I have a Sharpie as well for people to write their names and the date on the back and any other pertinent information. So here's a bit of a closer look at how things are set up. See how the plate can just slide in and out. If you're working with a more narrow table, that is really helpful. And then I have the brushes already out, and with the brushes next to the cup, they can dip there and then wipe there, and it's just really handy setup. Other aspects of setting up your space include making sure you have proper lighting. Make sure the way you've set up the canvases allows people to have light, not shadow on everything, and then they can't see what they're doing, they can't see the colors. So depending on the environment and space you've selected, which is another step that you want to consider, the space. Are you painting in a restaurant? Are you painting in a community center space? Where are you painting? Are there going to be kids around? Are there going to be animals around with shedding hair and things like that? These kinds of things are going to affect the whole experience. So make sure you consider that and make some adjustments accordingly. I prefer to have a space where I can have a little more control over the environment, selecting the music. So I do recommend you select an age group if you're doing this as a business. I have done paint nights where I've had a really big stretch of different age groups. I do find that more challenging. So when you kind of stick to, a certain age range of ability, and just even kids that can go and clean their water by themselves versus kids who can't, you're going to have a different experience. So speaking of age, and not just how you're setting up in terms of what you're going to paint and where you're going to paint according to, what age group, but also mental preparation for different age groups. I have observed through my many paint nights and experiences as a teacher that teaching adults versus children is a big difference in terms of how you help them get through the art piece. Now, I've found a lot of kids tend to be more able to be creative and express themselves and not be afraid to try new things and add whatever they want to their painting and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Sure, I'm going to add some butterflies here and I'm going to do this color here. And they don't even necessarily want an instructor. They just want a safe space to explore. They just want to be exploring paint. So if you are doing that age range, you might want to have a secondary activity because they're not going to take an hour and a half. They're going to be done fast. If you're doing older age group, even teenage and up, there's some that are going to really, well, I shouldn't even say just that age, because any age, you're going to have some students that really want to take their time and are much slower in terms of covering the canvas. So one thing I really like to do, here's a little tip, start with a background. Get them moving, a fast background, just covering the canvas with a color. That is a great way to just get people painting and loosen up, and that does help prepare them mentally too a little bit. Gets them past that point of a blank canvas. A blank canvas can be really intimidating. So get past that point quickly and just cover that background. Then they wash their brush and then they can let it dry, or if they start into the next step, if they can, great. But if they need some time to let it dry, let them socialize, maybe have some snacks, like chill, make it fun. The older age group, I find, really struggle with allowing themselves to be expressive, allowing themselves to be creative. They want to follow the instructor and they want to follow exactly. When it comes to older students, this is something that is a struggle. And it's because we get comfortable in certain areas and we're like, I'm good at this or I'm good at that, and we don't try other things, or we're worried about making it different because maybe we had a teacher that told us, no, that's wrong, that doesn't look good, who knows what it was. Maybe it's our own just self-criticisms and we're really good at that, but we need to stop it because it's not allowing us to let that inner artist out. And I believe art is truly for all. So you have an inner artist. And that's why I love doing a paint night, because I love helping people gain confidence to make something that doesn't have to be perfect. And I tell them, your livelihood does not depend on this piece, like being successful or looking a certain way, but mine does. And they usually enjoy that. So let them loosen up. Maybe even for adults, like have a little practice something. Like if there's an intricate detail they're going to be adding on and it's kind of scary, have a little extra piece of canvas or paper or something that they can just kind of do a little practice on so that they can figure out how the brush works. And also, if you're instructing or guiding somebody, make sure that you show them instances where, look, this is how you can hold the brush to get this effect, but I want you to not try to make the cloud exactly like this, because that's like trying to copy a signature. It's not going to turn out as nicely as if you just follow the process in making their piece. So those are some key things that I've noticed that I might not have expected. Sometimes I think, oh, an adult, they're going to be able to kind of go at it on their own. But no, it's more the kids that I found that are just, they're so fast. And then you have to have other projects ready for them to go if you're doing a 1.5 hour kind of project or type of thing. So you kind of have to set things up a bit different. The other thing, the little tips that I'm throwing in here before you get started, if you're an instructor, make sure that you are giving some tips at the beginning, like dipping your brush in the water and pinching it out the excess water, because then you're going to have drips. And if they've done this whole piece and then all of a sudden they're doing another color and then they have a big drip, that could potentially ruin the piece and really hurt their confidence, and their whole experience could be shattered. But even when mistakes happen, which most often they do, and you're going to run into areas where you're maybe for yourself, you're painting, or you're helping other people get through little blunders in their painting, think of solutions. Okay, so that didn't work out the way we wanted to or we planned to, but how can we make this work? You know, if you did an extra line, is that an extra tree, or could that be a shrub? Or, you know, maybe you're not painting this particular thing anymore. You need to try to find a solution and just make sure you have fun with it. In my business, I offer 2 different kinds of packages. One is all in. All they have to do is give me the space, the tables and the chairs and the people, and, you know, market the event and that kind of thing. And I just come, I bring all the supplies, I bring the demonstration piece. We've already communicated what piece that's going to be. And I come and I set up and I take over the whole event and I help with cleanup. That's one thing I do. Another option is to come and instruct, and they've set up everything. They're using their materials. They're bringing the people, all I do is come. Maybe I have a demo piece created that I've brought, but basically you're paying to have me there live rather than a tutorial online where you might have to, you know, rewind and that kind of thing. And that's totally fine. That works too. You can certainly use online tutorials. I have some paint with me sessions. I'm planning to do more in the future. So just depends on what kind of experience you want to give people, because a live teacher can really bring a certain energy into a space, can help you get out the paints that you need, all those kinds of things. And you can ask questions. Kind of hard to ask questions if it's not a live tutorial that you're watching. So that's another thing that I offer. When you're selecting a piece to paint, looks can be deceiving. You might look at a piece and think, oh, that's simple. That's going to be really easy. And then you get to it and it's really complicated and difficult and hard to do within the time frame and all of that. So maybe testing it out beforehand is going to be helpful, and doing that demo piece that I recommended, if you're instructing, that's a must. But if you're doing it with a group of friends, you could do a little sketchbook piece to kind of see, okay, maybe just even draw it out. Was that hard to draw? You know, how many colors are you doing? Are there different layers you have to add? Do you have to wait for paint to dry in order to do some aspects of the painting? That can be a bit of a struggle. Whether you're hosting or you're just part of a paint night, make sure you're being encouraging to the people around you and supportive. Everybody's at a different stage and we're just trying to have a good time. And you know, there's a lot of hard things in life. So let this be something that's not hard. Let this be something that's full of fun and learning and growth. Sometimes we will make mistakes and it will be a little stressful at times, but that's okay. Just step back up and get back into the game and have some fun. And remember that this is just one night, one painting, and there's always opportunity for more paintings. You can always paint over it if it's that bad, but you know, it can be a really good memory too of something that you created that wasn't so great, but maybe the experience was really fun. Just be mindful of giving people enough time to let their paintings dry a little bit. Maybe have a little snack time or socializing after. Take pictures. Don't forget to take a picture of everyone together with their paintings before anyone leaves. You're also going to want to make sure you tidy up. So wash those brushes. Do not let the brushes dry with acrylic paint in them. They're just a goner if you let that happen. So make sure you wash out your brushes, and you want them to last a long time, especially if you've invested in really nice ones. But even if they're inexpensive, you might be able to use them again. So why not wash them out, wash out your trays and cups, clean everything up, and don't forget that photo, because that could be a really fun memory to have, to share on your social media, and to share if it's a business that you're growing, to share with other people. And sometimes I forget to do that. And if it is going on social media and it is a business, make sure you've gotten permission to share that photo of other people on your socials, because nobody likes to find their picture on social media without their permission. Now, if you're going to have a paint night or go to a paint night and you're nervous about never painting before, or just about being part of the experience, and you'd like to do some practice at home, I do have some online classes available, as well as many other videos on this channel that you can check out, gain some tips, and do some practice in your sketchbook. Maybe attend a class in your local community, or one of my online classes for painting, drawing, because drawing skills always help with your painting. So try it out. You can try it for free. Check out my referral link below, and you can give it a go and have a little more confidence getting into there, because sometimes we just want to have a little practice before we go in with other people and start painting or drawing or do something we're uncomfortable or unfamiliar with. I hope that this guide has covered everything that you wondered about for prepping for a paint night, and that it helps you when you do go ahead and execute. Let me know in the comments if it has, or what questions you might still have. Thank you so much for being here. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. It helps me so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.